Good evening and thank you for joining us. The provincial government has issued a sobering forecast on the growth of COVID-19 cases. It says right now the numbers are doubling every 10 to 12 days. And if the current trend continues, Ontario could soon see 1,000 new cases a day. Colin DeMello reports.
As fall weather arrived, the province knew that COVID-19 would begin to creep back up. Every similar jurisdiction that Ontario compares itself to, from Michigan to Victoria, Australia, have been experiencing surges during their second waves.
We are starting to see that sharp upward curve.
Modeling experts say Ontario's current case count has been doubling every 10 to 12 days. And at the current rate, the province could experience over 1,000 cases of COVID-19 per day in early October. And just like the first wave, deaths could follow.
We're essentially in the same place now, that we are starting to project that same type of surge with a significant death count that would follow on that. And you will see the types of deaths that we were anticipating early on again.
Also, like the first wave, another big concern is hospital and ICU capacity. Currently, province-wide, there are 17 patients in intensive care with COVID-19. If that number rises to 350 patients, the modeling experts say it could cause capacity issues and lead to canceled surgeries.
We are trying to keep the rest of the healthcare system up and functional as possible.
The big question now, how is the province going to respond to the new modeling data? In Australia, which is seen as the worst case scenario, residents endured a 6-week lockdown, including closures, curfews, and limits on social interactions. Their case count went from over 600 per day down to 5.
We haven't seen any jurisdiction that has seen a drop in cases without stricter measures.
The Ford government, however, announced no new measures today and signaled a more balanced approach.
Dr. Williams understands health is a priority and the economy is right there to have a happy balance. Make sure we take care of people's health, but we need to keep the economy moving as well.
The government says it will be more surgical this time around, targeting regions and specific sectors with restrictions or lockdowns, letting low COVID regions simply recover from the pandemic-induced recession.
Now, for the first time in a week, the Thunder Bay district has a new COVID case. Few details are available, but the person is self-isolating and the source of the exposure is pending. The new case is not connected to a Cole Grand Morgan where a young student tested positive last week. The district health unit says there is still no evidence that the virus spread at the school. Meanwhile, there are 2 new cases in other parts of the region. The Northwest Health Unit has announced a positive case in the Rainy River area and another one in the Kenora region. No other details have been released. 4 years after the 7 youth inquest, lawyers representing the families at the center of the probe worry that progress in implementing the jury's 145 recommendations has stalled. Aboriginal Legal Services released its annual report card today, and for the first time, the overall grade slipped this year as all 3 levels of government saw their individual marks decline. Ryan Bonazzo has more.
After 3 years of steady progress from all parties implementing the 145 jury recommendations from the 7 youth inquest, the overall grade handed out by Aboriginal Legal Services has dropped for the first time from an A- in 2019 to a B+.
The work that is yet to be done on the recommendations are, as I mentioned, are the long-term recommendations. And some of those are difficult. They take significant investments, and most of those investments will be made by the provincial and mostly the federal government. But they are essential to make.
All 3 levels of government saw their individual marks drop this year. Canada slipped a full letter grade from a B+ to a C+. Ontario fell from a B+ to a B-, and the City of Thunder Bay dropped from an A to a B. City Manager Norm Gale says while the pandemic has slowed some of the work, the city's resolve remains the same.
Like other business lines and strategies that we have in the city, COVID-19 has disrupted our progress, but progress has continued, albeit at a slightly slower pace, and we continue to work.
Thunder Bay has implemented 26 of the 31 recommendations directed its way. Others, like developing a public education campaign on racially motivated crimes, are being rolled out soon. Mattawa Learning Center and Dennis Franklin Cromartie High School are among the Indigenous organizations that received an A+ for their efforts. Lawyer Caitlin Casper calls the report card a stark annual reminder of the privileges that many Canadians take for granted, such as access to education close to home.
My daughter is 14, and I could not imagine in all her youth not being close to her, being able to parent her, and not being able to care for her. The thought of being told that she didn't come home, of any youth in a boarding house not coming home, that they're missing and no one has acceptable answers, is incomprehensible and inexcusable.
For the third straight year, the Thunder Bay Police Service wasn't issued a grade. The lawyers say that won't change until police address the issues of systemic racism laid out in the 2018 OIPRD report. Ryan Benazzo, TBT News.
September 30th marks Orange Shirt Day across the country. The day honors residential school survivors and all those impacted in the years that followed. Lakehead University hosted a virtual gathering today to celebrate in the spirit of reconciliation. The event was highlighted by a guest speaker who shared his experiences in the residential schools. Avery McRae has more.
And what I experienced there is
Even decades after leaving residential schools for good, the pain and memories don't get easier for Martin Falls First Nation member Bob Baxter. Orange Shirt Day is an opportunity for First Nations, governments, schools, and communities to come together in the spirit of reconciliation. Baxter shared his experience with residential school through Zoom with the university. At age 72, it's been over 50 years since leaving the schools, and while he has forgiven the past, Baxter hasn't forgotten it.
I carried a lot of anger all my life towards the residential school system, towards the ministers, and towards just the general non-native society in general. You know, I just grouped them all together, and I said, these are the kind of people I'm going to be dealing with. You know, I don't have nothing to do with them.
The legacy of Phyllis Webster out of BC that started the Orange Shirt Day because of what happened to her when she went to residential school with an orange shirt on, and it was taken off her immediately. So it's a legacy of hers and a reminder of the impacts of residential schools on all of our kids in our communities.
While there was no Orange Shirt Day walk this year due to the pandemic, many people wore their orange shirt to visit the Sacred Flame under the teepee outside Pope John Paul Elementary School. Residents could offer their respects to the school survivors as well as the children that never made it home. Those who did survive are still living with their experience.
The school system broke the spirits of a lot of children, and the spirit of those children, some of them couldn't bring their spirits back up to the level where they could function.
A lot of stories over my tenure as a chief, and they really hit the heart, and they really have an impact on your mind and your thought process of what our young people went through in those residential schools.
It's a legacy that's going to be with us for a long time.
Those looking to learn more should visit orangeshirtday.org. Avery McRae, TBT News.
The issues of food security, housing, and employment in remote First Nations are all being addressed through a project in the works for over a decade. Today, a memorandum of understanding was signed between Discovery House, Kaikets, and Yubamatung First Nation to officially begin training for green housing complex builds in 5 Mattawa communities. Corey Nordstrom reports.
It's been the goal of Patrick Casey for more than a decade to help create solutions for remote First Nations. And as the executive director for Discovery House, he's nearing the finish line. An agreement between Discovery House, Kaikets, and Ebmatung has now been signed, outlining the commitment to train Indigenous youth to build housing complexes in 5 remote First Nations. And as Casey explains, these aren't just regular housing units.
It's designed to deliver housing, power generation, clean drinking water, liquid and solid waste management, which nobody ever likes to talk about, but it's very important, as well as an abundance of agricultural produce.
Casey has partnered with Microsoft, Samsung, and a number of similar companies to make this happen. The complexes will be from 12 to 60 units. Ebmatung Chief Harvey Yesno notes how much the solar panels and wind energy from the complexes can help his community powered by diesel but says it's the greenhouse being active for 8 months of the year which excites him the most.
Eating healthy foods like vegetables obviously is a big contributor to restoring better health amongst the population. Right now we're dealing with 1 in 4 people with diabetes issues.
Some training has already began for the 70-plus First Nations youth, and by the beginning of November, smart classrooms with high-speed satellite internet will be installed in each of the 5 Matawa communities.
One of the things that they told me is, oh, Dave, that's great that you have this program, but I have young kids at home and I cannot go to Thunder Bay or Timmins or wherever for this training. I'm sorry I can't, but I'd love to.
The construction craft worker is a trade training as well as the horticultural technician, and the environmental technician training is a nationally recognized training program. So regardless of where the youth decide to go with the preliminary education, then we start to specialize their training in the coming years.
The first housing complex built in one of the First Nations could be started as early as 2023. Corey Nordstrom, TBC News.
A Thunder Bay man wanted on a Canada-wide warrant for parole violations related to a manslaughter charge has been taken into custody. The man was spotted by police entering a building on South McKellar Street last evening. As officers attempted to contain the scene, the suspect attempted to escape by jumping from a second-story window. He was intercepted by an officer and subdued after a brief struggle. 42-year-old Sean Joseph Henderson is facing several new charges. He'll remain in custody until his next court appearance, October 7th. City road crews have been busy over the past few days fixing a mistake outside the Elks Lodge. An old sewer connection was filled with concrete because city officials thought it was no longer in service. The mishap reportedly occurred back on September 18th. City project engineer Rick Harms says they believe the Elks building had only 2 sewer connections, but it now turns out there was a third one, a clay pipe dating back to 1908, which serviced the downstairs washroom and the bar area. Roadwork crews poured concrete into it after being told it was obsolete, but soon afterward, Elks staff noticed that their drains were backing up. The area around the front entrance was dug up this week and a new sewer connection has now been installed. Harms says total cost for the city to fix the mistake is about $20,000 to $25,000. Thunder Bay Shelter House received a generous donation from the United Food and Commercial Workers, Local 633 and 175 today. The CW donated this pre-used Sprinter passenger van to the shelter, and the arrival was marked by a special event this morning. Shelter House Executive Director Michelle Jordan says the new van will be used to assist with their street outreach service program. Local union representative Sean Haggerty says their members collectively agreed this donation would benefit the community most.
Just trade it in, why don't we donate it to this worthy cause? So the executive board of Locals 175 and 633, some of which are behind us today, voted unanimously to reach out to Shelter House and see if they were interested in the donation.
It's amazing. Thunder Bay is such a giving community, and when I got the email about this van, I was so ecstatic because this was really huge for us to be able to put the service back out on the road and continue to do the work that we're doing for COVID.
The shelter's former SOS van was converted for new uses in June as the result of funding they received for triage and transportation services. Now that they have a second vehicle, Jordan says they are hoping to resume the SOS program later this month, but first, the van needs new signage and must be equipped with proper safety precautions. A small plane flying from Winnipeg to Thunder Bay had to glide into the local airport's runway after it ran out of fuel while still in the air on Sunday. The Transportation Safety Board says on approach, the pilot noticed a low fuel light and switched to his other tank, but it too was empty. The single-engine Piper aircraft was able to land without crashing, and neither the pilot nor the lone passenger was injured. The City of Thunder Bay held its annual recognition event for citizens of exceptional achievement last night, and like most events held in 2020, this one was done virtually. This was the event's 44th edition, with awards presented to individuals, teams, and organizations who helped to create a community where people feel a sense of belonging and responsibility to each other. City Council members took turns recognizing the winners from 3 categories, along with the Youth Award, the Good Citizen Award, and the Spirit of Thunder Bay Award.
This year, we have been faced with an unprecedented pandemic, and I am disappointed that we were not able to meet in person. This makes it tremendously more challenging to accomplish the work our recipients have been doing in our community, but it also makes it even more important. During difficult times, we must pull together and step up to help our community through. These citizens are role models for all of us, and they are the heart of our city.
Well, the Spring into Summer trailer draw run by St. John Ambulance probably could have been renamed Spring into Fall after being delayed by COVID-19, but nonetheless, the grand prize winning ticket was drawn earlier this afternoon.
Adrian Spivak. Congratulations, Adrian.
The winner of the Coachman Catalina trailer, priced at over $40,000, was announced, as well as the second prize winner of a silent generator by Honda, and third prize, a fishing kayak. Despite the draw being pushed back, every ticket was sold. About $52,000 was raised for St. John Ambulance programs, some of which remain up in the air due to the pandemic.
Whether we're running or not, we still have to keep our equipment up to date. We have to supply PPE for our medical first responders, and there are still certain events that are happening out there, just not your big gatherings. So those are still happening. Our car seat education program is still happening. We're still teaching people how to install car seats properly, whether that be virtually or in the office, social distancing here.
And if you didn't win this time around, there's good news. Next year's draw is slated to get underway on time in February.
Well, Fiona, I